Good evening, everybody. Welcome to 1,000 Words. Before we get started with tonight's episode, interviewing Piers Corbyn, if you'd like to help support us and keep the podcast going, if you're enjoying them, pop over there, only a few quid a month, and you get extras, you get behind the scenes, you'll get painting tutorials, you'll get time lapses of me painting, you'll get otherwise unseen footage of the guests, and a whole load of other stuff. So help keep us going, and we appreciate the support. Thanks very much. Enjoy tonight's show.
Standing by the coffee machine in the physics building and see this guy wearing clogs with his long hair. I wonder what, this is a weirdo. And I talked to him and found this is Brian May, of course. Yeah, a lot of groups are infiltrated. There will be infiltration in every group. Look, it's unimaginable to think that the powers that be would not infiltrate. Of course they'll infiltrate. They'll set up groups as well. Everything that happens, they will try and use it against us. And we have to think the same thing. Everything that happens, we should try and use it against them.
Right, Piers Corbyn.
Hello.
Hello. Nice to meet you.
Well, fantastic to meet you.
Thank you for sitting for my
Well, I've only just
portrait.
started.
Thank you for being here.
You should thank me at the end if I make it.
You'll make it, don't worry. I'm sure you've got a lot of stamina.
Oh, I've got a lot of stamina. I used to do cross-country running.
Okay, there you go.
So I identify as 47, and I'm not revealing my real age.
I know how old you are.
Okay. It's all on the internet.
Yeah, it is. Right, I'll get started. So first, while I'm getting started, if you could just look straight ahead.
Yes.
Fix on the spot.
Yes.
Try and be relaxed.
Yes.
And tell us all about Piers Corbyn. How Piers Corbyn became Piers Corbyn.
Well, I guess it was my mother and father. On the Whitsun bank holiday in 1946. That's what happened. And my mother said I was...
Do you know the date, do you?
Well, I worked it out. Whatever the Whitsun holiday is, 9 months after that. Because, You see, all my brothers and my mother are born within 3 days of each other. Because I think my dad was into socialist planning, you might say. But my birthday's in March. So I asked her, why is my birthday in March? And all my brothers, the 25th, 26th or 28th of May. And she said, oh, you're a surprise. And then she said, you're always a surprise. Anyway, I worked out why. Because there was an extra bank holiday then after the war. Everyone must have been really happy then in 1946, you know.
Well, yeah.
Food rationing was, well, actually, you know.
It was still rationing.
The Labour government carried it on because they believed in imposing these things. You know, it was a big relief because there was no more bombing and all that stuff, which was pretty scary. Anyway, so that's my origin.
What was your childhood like? Tell us a little bit about your childhood.
Well, I guess it was really interesting and exciting, and my parents were both very caring. I had 3 brothers. There was 4 of us and 4 boys in the family, which was pretty hard work for my mother, I would say.
Yeah. Are you the eldest?
No, I'm the 3rd one.
Okay.
Jeremy's the youngest. The eldest is Edward, or David as he calls himself now, and the next one was Andrew, who died in Papua New Guinea when he was only 57.
Oh.
And then there's me, and then there's Jeremy.
Okay.
So...
and you're close with your brothers?
Well, I've got a lot of political disagreements with Jeremy right now, but I was, in fact, closest to Andrew, the one who died, I would say. Because both of us went to Imperial College, and he got a first in mining engineering, and I got a first in physics there. The eldest brother, Edward, he was a flight test engineer for Concorde, so, you know, an accomplished engineer.
Yeah.
And then there's Jeremy, who's, as you know, in Parliament. Well, bringing up, our mother bringing us up, as I said, hard work. We always had a lot of activities. We were all into making things. Jeremy was into cars.
Was he?
Yeah, and I made a huge number of things which got well. Everybody, we lived in Wiltshire at first,
Yeah.
in a house on a hill beside. Well, it was in a little village, and then my father started working in Stafford, and we
What was his profession?
moved to Newport, Shropshire. He's a electrical engineer, electrical design engineer.
Okay.
He designed. He was very, very skilled and knowledgeable. When he retired, he was working in Culham at the Joint European Taurus project, the JET project, which is having hyper hot plasma. It's called hydrogen and protons and electrons in a bottle. It's the sun in a bottle, basically.
Okay.
And he was in charge of the magnetic fields for that. And he was asked one day, he said, "Mr. Corbyn, do you know why you're working for us?" He said, "I don't know." He said, "Well, there's only 7 people in the world that can do this stuff, and you're one of them." So that was him anyway. So he was a very scientific guy, and I guess I picked up a lot of things from him from a very early age. Was always inquiring. So when did the weather, I made lots of equipment when I was in Shropshire at school, or made them at home, of course. I built a screen for thermometers, made a weather station, built a high thing in the field to measure wind speed and wind direction. I made a device to measure average temperature using electrolysis and changing resistance of a copper resistor in this Stevenson screen.
What was it that drew you to weather?
Well, I think it was sort of physics in nature.
Right.
Because when I got to science, I realised I just really interested in physics. But I would say I was obsessed with physics. So weather was the nearest thing you could do. And I built a barometer up the side of the house, water, but it was brine to stop it freezing. So it was a 30-foot high thing, of course, and you climbed up on a ladder to measure the exact height of the water, and had a system to remove the bubbles before you measure the pressure and so on.
Yeah.
Put them in loops. Anyway, that was published in Weather, the Journal of the Royal Meteorological Society. The various experimental things that I made were published in there, as was a measurement I did of the eccentricity of the Earth's orbit by looking at this elevation of the sun once a week for a year. And you do various calculations and you can measure it. And it came out about right.
Okay.
And that was published as well in the Journal of the British Astronomical Association. So you're painting away. So what
I am
else do you
painting
want me
away.
to
No,
talk
no,
about?
you can carry on.
Well, all right.
Tell us about, so your academic career.
Yeah, after in Shropshire, I got a Royal Scholarship to Imperial College, which was my own idea. I mean, I enjoyed physics so much that I looked around, and my elder brother Andrew was already in Imperial doing, well, he did geology, then mining engineering, which was really much better for him. So I got a Royal Scholarship there, which doesn't go to many people, and went to Imperial.
Was your father
doing physics.
Was your father proud of you?
Oh, he was, I would say. Yeah,
Yeah.
he was very proud. He was very proud of all his sons. I
Yeah.
remember at his funeral, this woman going around said, "Mr. Corbyn was very proud of his 4 sons."
Yeah.
And she said that about 100 times,
Yeah.
which was nice. Anyway, I remember on the way to the station in the car, Stafford Station, getting on the train to go to Imperial first day, he said to me, "Look, there's 2 things you've got to worry about." I said, "What are those?" He said, "Politics and women." I said, "What do you mean?" He said, they'll there'll be distractions as you doing your work. You should just concentrate on getting a good degree and then worry about both of them. Because he knew I was into politics and women, you see.
Okay.
Although I didn't have any girlfriends at that time. But
what was his political stand?
Well, he and my mother were sort of Labour left, pseudo-communist, believed that socialism applied scientifically and communism or something like it would be the answer. But they were a bit concerned about Stalinism. They didn't like that at all. So they were Labour left. But of course, you see, you have to understand when people hear that Labour left then was what we would call old Labour, and they were genuine people and purposes, whereas what calls itself the left now is entirely different.
Absolutely.
And a misuse of the term Labour and left. So I don't use those terms anymore. The issue now is accountability, really. It's world tyranny versus accountable democracy.
Yeah. Would that be something that your mum and dad would have recognised? Or does that feel...
They would. I think if they were around now, they would agree with what I'm doing.
Yeah.
I'm sure they would. But they would have been pretty puzzled as how we got there. Because, see, they believed in the NHS, vaccination, all this stuff. I mean, everybody did then.
So would they...
But my father was pretty receptive of, you know what I mean? When he saw a trick going on.
Okay, he was flexible-minded.
Well, yes, and he could see tricks played by the powers that be.
Okay, so he was quite savvy, but...
Yeah, so my mother as well.
Yeah. But it sounds to me a little bit like people sometimes like almost an intellectual idea of what's right and wrong, but sometimes reality hits that kind of worldview in the face. It seems like perhaps with your parents that they'd be confused as to how we got here. But
yes,
perhaps
absolutely.
So you talked about their
if she was
more
alive
scientific
now,
sort of...
Yeah. She'd say... she called me Richard, of course, at home, because I was called Piers Richard. But anyway, she said, Richard, are you telling me that vaccines don't work? You know what I mean? She would be completely puzzled.
Yeah.
Because the theory of vaccines is fine. But I would say, well, no, they probably were a con from the start.
Yeah.
And now they got something else in them anyway, the mRNA, which is designed to kill us. And she would say... I'm sure she'd say, you mean they're trying to kill us? She wouldn't want to believe that at all.
No. Well, that's the problem that a lot of people have.
Well, it is. It's not very believable. I find it difficult to believe myself sometimes, but we see the evidence. You see, the good thing about my parents is they were scientists, proper scientists. They believed in evidence.
Sure.
And I remember my father saying, the problem with physicists, he says, is they believe in their instruments. Because quite often the instruments are wrong, you see. So he was very, very, very clear about evidence and real evidence.
Yeah.
Given the very intense magnetic fields he had to measure, control, and design the electric currents for. And later, otherwise, before that, he was doing all sorts of things, rectifier design and so forth.
Yeah.
For English Electric in Stafford.
Yeah. So how do we overcome that? For those of us who aren't psychopaths, how do we overcome this reluctance we have to believe that psychopaths appear to be in control to some extent of what's going on? Is that how you would...
They are psychopaths. I mean, how do we overcome people's inability to believe that?
To accept that, yeah. And why do we think some people... So with your parents, for example, they had a pure, almost scientific belief in the great project or the...
Oh yeah, they would believe in scientific socialism.
Yeah,
a bit like Tony Benn. You know what I mean? Tony Benn at the time he was the great hero of everybody.
Yeah,
and we'll talk about him later. But
yeah, we will.
Yes, I'm just like.
So what
reflecting on that?
Why does that fail? What are we missing? What are those of us who might see the world in that way? What are we missing? What fundamental bit of information are we missing?
Well, human psychology is very important. You see, everyone has a belief system, where animals that learn things, and you learn how to survive something, and a mental picture of something is very important. So mostly you want to defend that picture.
That's an interesting point. So you think
It's a natural process.
we're hardwired
Of course.
to create a status quo in
Yes,
some respects.
you're hardwired to believe what you know, or to believe what you believe and carry on believing. And you're also aware that there are people trying to convince you of something else anyway, so which may be untrue too. So there will be this resistance to changing the mind. But why do people fly in the face of evidence? Yes. Well, of course, there's an ideology put upon us is that ideas and theories themselves are a force. Now, I don't accept that. In physics, you've got to have evidence. Then you can have a theory, yes. But if the evidence doesn't match the theory is wrong, absolutely wrong, and has to be discarded or amended. And of course, I've got to long-range weather forecasting by discarding and amending many, many ideas.
Yeah.
Anyway, we're kind of...
Well, no, that's I think that's a really interesting
Perhaps you should go back to Imperial College. What happened there?
Okay, let's pick up there.
So I arrive in Imperial College. I meet... standing by the coffee machine in physics, you know, now it's got various names, but anyway, standing by the coffee machine in the physics building and see this guy wearing clogs with his long hair. I wonder what, this is a weirdo. And I talked to him and found this is Brian May, of course. And he was talking about his guitar that him and his dad had made. And
that's right, he made his own guitars, didn't he?
That's right. And
what year was this then?
This was 1965.
Okay.
October.
Okay.
So that's Imperial College, first year, first term. And I came top in the physics exam then, first term, which was kind of, wow, a bit a transcendental experience, I would say. Anyway.
That's an interesting choice of words.
Yes.
Was it a very powerful, you remember that feeling of, was it a validation feeling of,
yes,
that you'd arrived, that you'd achieved something?
Yes, I did. Well, I remember looking at the list because they put up, it's called the Christmas test, right? Mm-hmm. They put up a list of all in order of, marks. And I was looking up the list, sort of, I started somewhere near the top and started looking up and I couldn't find my name.
Okay.
And I said to somebody, because and someone said, I can't see my name. And this guy said, no, Piers, just look up.
Right.
Up, further. What? My name was right at the top.
Oh,
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I said, wow, that's amazing. Anyway, I carried on doing physics and got a first-class degree in physics with the theoretical physics option. And then carried on doing research there. But interesting, yeah. I was thinking of doing meteorology because I was interested in that. And the professor in charge of the course on meteorology, he came up to me and said, Mr. Corbyn, you realise if you study meteorology, you probably can only get jobs with a Met Office. I said, yeah, that's right. He said, yeah, and they're part of the Ministry of Defence. So you'd have to sign the Official Secrets Act. Would you be able to do that? Because they knew I was a bit of an activist, even though I wasn't doing that much on the advice of my father. But, I said, well, I could sign it, but I don't know if they'd accept my signature. And he said, yes, precisely. So based on what he said, I decided not to do meteorology in the final year as one of a sub course, mm-hmm. and did theoretical physics instead, which double theoretical physics to be more precise, and I did practical physics, which I was really working much too hard, but I did well in practical as well as in, and I did, I passed it with a first-class degree anyway.
Yeah.
But I don't regret doing theoretical physics at all, because later on when I did astrophysics in Queen Mary College, about it was more than 10 years later, actually. Well, about 10 years, 12 years later. I went back to Imperial a few times and I went to theoretical physics lectures, which were relevant to things I was doing in astrophysics on the string loop theory of galaxy formation. I'm sure some people will be very knowledgeable about that as I speak.
Yeah.
I had a paper published on that as well, which was interesting.
So for a lot of the people watching this will be skeptical about some of the stories that we're told about how the universe works. There's a lot of skepticism. How skeptical do you think people should be, and how much should we trust how much of it makes sense to you, the science? People talk about scientism as a kind of religion, which isn't an objective search for truth.
Interesting thing to say. Well, I did research in Queen Mary and had an MSc, papers published on the mean matter density of the universe, neutrino mass, and also that paper I mentioned on the string loop theory of galaxy formation. But the mean matter density of the universe depends on understanding the origin of the universe, i.e. the Big Bang. But there are fundamental problems with the Big Bang, absolutely fundamental problems. There's the issue of the uniformity, this is getting a bit technical, of the microwave background. The cosmic microwave background is radiation from space, which comes from all directions. 4 degrees K is the radiation temperature, and it's very uniform. So, and the idea is this radiation was created when electrons and protons combined into hydrogen atoms and give off radiation. So it filled the universe then. But it's very uniform when you look at it. So it means the universe must have been very uniform then, when it was formed. However, the theoretical age of the universe at that point means that there would have been irregularities from the Big Bang, kind of, you would expect irregularities in anything.
Yeah.
And these should be bigger than is observed in the uniformity and very small ripples in the cosmic microwave background. So then they have a theory of inflationary universe, so that the universe had expanded at greater than the speed of light. So there wasn't so much time for the formation of disuniformities. But see, this contradicts.
Well, in a way, in sort of layman's terms, it exploded so quickly that it found uniformity almost instantly.
Yes. But having anything going faster than the speed of light, of course, is contrary to, Einstein and others' theory that nothing can go faster than the speed of light.
Yeah.
So there's fundamental contradictions in the whole theory. My view is that you have to look at it in a different way, namely that the speed of light actually is controlled by the distant matter in the universe and how it's moving. So the speed of light could have changed, whatever change means in this context, since the beginning of time. But anyway, was the universe really a Big Bang at the start? This was put forward by a religious operation, namely it's a Catholic scientist put that forward.
What, the Big Bang theory?
Yes. But you see, when you look at galaxies, they always look as if, when you go out, look further out in space, they're all like moving faster. So away from something, and you go backwards in time and you conclude, well, okay, so many billion years ago, it must have all started at a point. But, well, that's a theory, and you can develop a whole lot of theoretical things about the ratio of different elements, compositions, and so on, based on this theory. And it's this very successful theory. But as I said, there are problems with it when you look at these issues of non-uniformity. Also, what do you want to believe about what was before time? I mean, that's like not really an askable question.
Yeah. Is there a point where it all just becomes almost impossible to ponder? with our
Yes.
current understanding.
Yes, I would say so. Yes. Of
But
course,
we have a desire, don't we, to...
Yeah, we do. We have a desire to explain everything in terms of our limited consciousness and understanding of the universe.
Yeah.
I mean, physics is amazing, and it produces equations which can describe all sorts of things for billions of years and accurately come up with predictions which are incredible.
Sure.
Which is what drew me to it.
Well, isn't that the real test?
But anyway, back to the universe. You see, there's other ideas about the universe, like it's a bouncing universe, so it expands and then contracts, and expands
like breath
and then
almost.
Contracts. Yeah. With periods of billions of years.
Sure.
That's one idea. The other idea is a sort of continuous creation theory, and there's various people in biology now talking about continuous creation within living things. Now, look, I suspect they're talking nonsense, but you know, it's could be.
What's the basic gist of that then? Would you say continuous creation?
Yes.
That we were constantly no beginning, no end.
Yes. Well, that's what Fred Hoyle's idea was, that the universe has been continuously created out of kind of nothing, spontaneously in space.
There's a sense
he didn't really have evidence for this, but you know,
okay.
It's there's a lot. It would explain certain things. So if you go back far enough in time, then, well, of course, you still got a time issue. When did time begin? But I don't know what he did about whether things disappear as well or not. I'm not sure what he had on that.
There's a lot of people who suggest that the advanced theoretical physics theories at the moment are sort of matching up with a lot of ancient spiritual wisdom.
Well, I don't think. Look, people who say these things mostly either know nothing about physics, or if they're physicists, they know nothing about spiritualism. There's a lot of people talking rubbish out of their heads or backsides to get hits on the internet.
But
I would say,
well,
lots of people say lots of things on that.
Yeah. Okay. But there is a sense that you know, that brick wall that we hit almost, where we talk about the 0 point.
Yeah.
Is something which is sort of talked about in the.
Oh, sure. No. I'm not saying dismiss anything that is written in the past. I'm just saying that. See, people look in the past. Oh, yeah, it's all written down. Yeah, that's all there. That's
no, I agree with that.
Nonsense.
I agree with that. It's too simplistic.
Yeah. But you know, those people ought to study something, because you ask them an actual question, they won't be able to answer anything.
Yeah.
You know, what is the second law of thermodynamics? They won't know what you're talking about. Well,
yeah.
That is fundamental to anybody who's done physics. They've got to understand that. Now, of course, you might not understand it either, but it doesn't matter. But I'm just saying as an example of something.
No, I don't really. I'm not a physicist, but I am. Hopefully, I have enough humility to say I don't.
If I just say
I don't know.
heat only flows from a hot body to a cold body, that is the essence of the second law of thermodynamics. And I mean, it covers other things, which is why it's wrapped up in a fancy name like that. But that's the essential understanding.
Okay.
So anyway,
do you
that
think
was imperial. I became president of the student union. So after I got the degree, I got more political, became president of the student union, and met the Queen, who came to open a building in Imperial College. Do you mind if I?
No, you get that.
Suspected spam. I get a lot of
That's
these.
funny. He called me earlier as well.
I wonder. God, because my phone is numbers around a lot of places. Anyway, I had the honour to meet the Queen, and I refused to wear a tie. I remember the rector of Imperial College, Lord Penny, who'd been in charge of the bomb effort in Los Alamos. You know, the British bomb effort, the nuclear bomb effort. He was actually a very, very clever and understanding political operator. What have people said about him? Because we had various demands when I got elected president, and he gave in to all of them and more. So my various left-wing friends couldn't. They said, "What, Piers? What? You've won. We've won. That's it. Okay. But he gave us more than we asked for. So, you know, people who usually sit around and say, yeah, let's ask for more and have another aggro. They couldn't even do that.
Okay.
Which was good. No, we got extra representation on the governing bodies, and they agreed my demand that we should diversify courses in Imperial College from just science and technology into other things, because I said it was a bit boring. And the Queen, in a conversation, asked me, she said, Piers, tell me, don't students come to Imperial College because it is so narrow? I said, yes, they do. But after a couple of years, they change their minds. They want something a bit broader. And of course, the backdrop of this is you get more girls there if you have wider courses. And, you know, this is what mostly men in Imperial are missing. So there was all sorts of drivers for this. But anyway, the governing body and the Board of Studies accepted what I said. And that's why Imperial then, well, good or bad, but they broadened into medicine and business. And you know what the medicine has led to is pretty horrific. But nevertheless, it was the foundation for Imperial becoming a separate university, as opposed to being a college of the University of London.
Okay.
So that's part of my heritage in Imperial. I don't know what else to say about it, Imperial. There's many, many things one could say.
Okay. On the 16th of March, cartoonist Bob Moran and football legend Matt Tissier will be appearing at Hope Sussex. Both will be giving talks, and Bob will also be selling his book and taking a cartoon workshop. 1,000 Words will be exhibiting portraits from the series and presenting them to some of the sitters, including Kate Shumarani, Piers Corbyn, Robin Manotti, Mad Mick, and of course Bob and Matt. So grab a ticket from hopesussex.co.uk and make sure you say hello. Tell us a bit chronologically, let's go.
I know, something about when I was student union president. Very exciting stuff. I was, as I said, I didn't wear a tie to meet the Queen. I wore a cravat. This was a kind of protest, but frankly...
Have you always been a rebel then?
She didn't care a damn, really, because she must meet a lot of people that don't wear ties.
Yeah.
Have I always been a rebel? Well, yes, as long as it's based on evidence. I would always insist on evidence-based science. But I think also when I was president, I learned things, you know, be careful about what you assume is true, right? Because you remember, this is Imperial College, 99%, or then about 95% male. The student union bar was men only, right? And the women had their own little place called the Imperial College Women's Association, and they had a lounge, the Iqua Lounge. So the various people campaigned, said, Piers, we should open up the union bar to men and women. I said, yeah, I think that's fine, that's great, we should do that. And I then talked to the women in the Imperial College Women's Association. They said, Piers, no, we don't want to go there. We don't want to be part of that drunken lot. We want our freedom to stay where we are in our own space. We don't want the rights to go in there because the rights to be on our own space might get taken away in the future. It was really interesting, you know what I mean? I said, well, okay, I can't push that if you don't want it, you know. Now, subsequently, it was changed to be open. When there was more women around who could go in there and feel a bit defended, perhaps. But interesting. The thing is, don't assume what you're told. Anyway, we did a lot of things there. We supported the... oh, no, this was before. We supported the student occupation of London School of Economics. We used to go there and... get G'd up by revolution there. Those of us who were active before I got president in Imperial. And that was interesting now, comparing that with now. Well, we went to LSE because you could talk about anything to anybody and have a sensible discussion, right? I mean, they were really into ideas, all those students in the LSE, whereas in Imperial, only about a third of the students were really into ideas. They were mostly into nose down, so you get your degree and so forth.
Yeah.
Anyway, you go to the London School of Economics now and it is brain dead. You start talking about something, say, yo, you're a Nazi, you can't believe that, that's wrong. You know what I mean? They won't discuss even climate change. Look, don't be ridiculous. Of course climate's changing. You know what I mean? They're completely full of these fake lift nonsense ideas, and that place just teaches ideology.
Yeah.
I mean, it's creepy, but you know how things have changed. I
And
mean, the police used to call it when we were late at night going around, you know, after doing something in the city. They'd say, "Oh, you guys from the London School of Comics, are you?" And that's what they'd call the London School of Economics, the police, calling the students. But now, I don't know, it'd be the London School of Boredom, I suppose. I don't know. Anyway, there we are. Sorry, so that's imperial.
Do you think that's all by design? Do you think that the education system has been corrupted, or do you think it's just a natural evolutionary thing where people fall into easy habits? And
well, it was expanded with the Robbins report in the 1950s, I suppose, or 60s, early 60s, which expanded higher education, and then with Tony Blair expanded it more and more. So now, you know, everyone goes to college.
They do.
And I'm not sure if it's that useful. I mean, I asked my son, does he want to go? And it was during COVID. He said, no, Dad, it's a waste of space. And, you know, at that time, he was right, I would say, because during COVID time, people just sat in front of computers anyway. But...
How old's your son?
He's 23.
Oh, young.
Yes, that's young, you might say.
Is that your only son?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And are you close? Do you see a lot of him?
Not enough of him, no. He's a mixed race. His mother's from Ivory Coast.
Yeah.
I don't go there often enough, but I don't, because I still live separately, but we did live together, all of us, for quite a while in the Alton estate in Roehampton. They've moved subsequently.
Yeah.
Anyway, we can come back to
Sure.
families and the like later on if you like.
Yeah.
This is a sort of chronology, I suppose, isn't
Yeah.
it? So anyway, yes, physics, then astrophysics in Queen Mary. At the same time, I was getting very active on housing and squatting things, as people may know. So let's think. I was doing research in Imperial. I was in the International Marxist Group, and my elder brother Andrew, we got homeless not homeless, we had a rented flat in Rendell Street, 17A Rendell Street, London West 10, just off the Portobello Road. And we went to a rent tribunal and got rent halved, and then we got a notice to quit because you didn't have security. So Andrew said, why don't we squat? I said, oh, don't be silly. Only hippies do that. And then he persuaded me and we did squat.
Okay.
And never looked back, really. So we built a big squatting movement around there, had 200 people in Elgin Avenue. We had this slogan, which I think is very relevant to now: 1 eviction, 2 squats. So
okay.
If the powers that be, whatever the squat in the area was, and a lot of them were in private buildings, because we were in council stuff in the street, some of it short life housing on a licensed arrangement, some of it just squats all mixed up. But in the area there was private buildings, and we squatted in those, and people got chucked out quite quickly, and then we'd squat in more. And the church commissioners, they had buildings there that we squatted, and we double squatted and so on, you see. And it worked, so it expanded, and there were 600 squats in the area when it came to the powers that be trying to evict Elgin Avenue, where there were 200 of us. And, well, to cut a long story short, we had clear policies which, in the International Marxist Group, people didn't think I should be mixing up with lumpen proletariat, as they called them. And they said, Piers, you can only campaign on this providing you accept that the real housing struggle is tenants in Notting Hill. I said, oh yeah, I'll accept that. And then, of course, just carried on what I was doing. But the tenants all over London followed us, actually, because we were resisting, you know, all sorts of things. But we had no evictions housing for all. GLC, show us the plans, was our slogan. The GLC did show us their plans, which was interesting. The plans were to demolish the whole thing and build council housing. So it was laudable, you know what I mean? It wasn't unreasonable. They were old Victorian houses, in my opinion. They should have been renovated because they were beautiful houses. But, you know, that's what happened. But we said, well, we still got to live somewhere. And we built barricades and defied the law and eventually got rehoused. But from the barricades to everyone got rehoused. Now, this was an historic victory on the October the 15th, 1975. But the build-up to that was really very important because obviously people get scared. So the winter before, there was maybe 50 or 100 people in the street, right, when we needed 200. So we had a policy of everyone who came, I interviewed them. I said, look, if you come here, we're going to be building barricades, we're expecting to resist. Oh, yeah, they'd all agree, of course, but they wouldn't necessarily believe it because, you know, people will say anything to get a house. But the breakthrough came. We had the street pretty full, and then we got this message that Terminus Road, Brighton, little spot there, they had turned the bailiffs away. And this was news, so I published it in our news sheet called Easy. Elgin Avenue Struggles, Yes, was the name of our news sheet, which came out every week on a duplicated piece of paper, which was eagerly read by everybody, quite full of words, but, you know, it had a message. Terminus Road, Brighton squatters had won against bailiffs. So I told people this. I said, wow. Now, there was another squat coming up, which we had squatted, called Canal Flats, just off the Harrow Road nearby, where there was about 50 people. And I said to them, look, guys, they've won in Terminus Road. Let's see what we can do here. So they built barricades there, got hose pipes and squirted water out the window and stuff like that. And they got evicted, but the consequence was, because they were evicted in the rain and these Irish families were sitting along the pavement in the rain, and the local vicar said that Jesus wouldn't have allowed this and Jesus was a squatter or something like that. You know what I mean? People were saying that type of thing. We got a lot more support because of our resistance. And then people in Elgin Avenue realised that, yes, we could win. So we did build the barricades. We had negotiations with the GLC, because we had won one court case because they'd made a mistake in their summonses, but they finally got themselves together where they did get an eviction order for the whole street. And well, I met the Sheriff of London in the High Court, and he said, yes, we're going to be coming for you. And I just got everybody to stand firm. And that weekend, just before we were expecting the eviction to happen during the week, only 4 people left the street in that weekend. Okay. And then I knew we were going to win. That was really the most important weekend of my life in a lot of ways.
Oh, really?
Well, if you think about it, because had they moved, we would have lost. We would have all got evicted. But because we stayed put, the GLC realised we weren't going to move. They didn't want the embarrassment of women and children screaming in the street, or people throwing things off the roof, or violence, whatever. You know, there were people there ready to fight.
Yeah.
They gave in, and they agreed to rehouse everybody in Elgin Avenue, all 200. And then that's when I was rehoused in Southwark, and then got rehoused to the flats I am now in. Yes, but the important lesson is we had a message which related to a wider community. We had support from tenants, and we had meetings after that, London Tenants Federation sort of stuff. And the most influential tenants federation in the whole of London, if not the whole of England, came there from Camden, the Camden Federation of Tenants and Residents. They came to a meeting and they said, Piers, squatters are now, what you're doing and what squatters have done is the leading housing struggle of our time.
Okay.
That's what they said. But you see, the IMG had told me I was sure to be following them, and they were telling me, no, we're following you. So what's the lesson about that and these revolutionary groups? Well, they do have fixed ideas. What was the IMG really? Well, it was infiltrated, by the way.
You think all these things are infiltrated?
Yes, absolutely. Everything will be infiltrated. It doesn't mean there's not good things happening in there. I mean, there were amazing people in the IMG who would, really were genuine resistors. Who wasn't clear.
Yeah.
But, I remember the ideas being put in there that we had to oppose abortions. And there was a national abortion campaign. Now, to me, I thought, well, why do we oppose abortion?
What's that got to do with it? Yeah.
Well, I don't know.
Yeah.
Good question.
Yeah.
Where did it come from?
Yeah.
I mean, I would say this was injected, and the IMG, I don't know if the IMG was set up as a police operation. I doubt it, but it would have been infiltrated. Anyway, as you do know, this is flipping back to the current, Theresa May set up or agreed to have an independent inquiry into police infiltration of political groups since 1968. And that happened because of the police forming relationships with women and breeding, having children, and then buggering off.
Yeah.
And
there's a famous case, wasn't there?
Yeah, she didn't like it. And I think that's what convinced her there should be an inquiry. This inquiry is still going on. My solicitor, Richard Parry, is involved in it often. It's looking at loads of things. And it was revealed there were 2 police agents following me for about 10 years. When they're in courts, I think the ruling circles generally have a policy of telling the truth because they do need to know between each other what's going on. But there will be times when they don't. Just let's be clear. I don't have illusions in courts, by the way. But on this inquiry, they did issue, it isn't this file because I left it at home, but it's this thick. There's a file this thick, pages and pages and pages of what I was doing on a daily basis for about 5 or 10 years.
Really?
In the International Marxist Group. And they were in our group. They came to my flat in Notting Hill. They wrote down what happened.
Oh, so you knew who they were?
Yeah. It's revealed what their names were, their official names were.
Okay.
Yeah. They were friendly sort of guys. There were 2 of them. They always turned up together, probably watching each other, and they were always on time. That's the only thing I noticed about them.
That was a red flag.
Well, that's a thing to notice. Yeah. Maybe if you're going to be a police agent, don't be on time.
Yeah.
Now. I mean, I don't know, but they were reliable. They sold the newspaper. They didn't talk very much. They came up with a few ideas. They did what an average member would do, but they were busy writing it all down.
Oh, okay. How did that feel? Did you feel
Looking back now, well,
yeah.
I was kind of fascinated. I thought, well, okay, they've got a record of what I did, and it's like a diary. They were very interested in anything to do with Ireland. We were in the Anti-Internment League, which was against the internment without trial that was happening in Ireland at the time, if you recall. Or maybe you don't, no.
No, was this the time of the Troubles?
Yeah, that's right.
A euphemistic term, the Troubles, isn't it?
The Troubles, yeah. And I had an Irish friend living in the flat as well, and they were obviously interested in... That was later, but that was, when I moved to Elgin Avenue squat because the police operation carried on looking for me.
Yeah.
A lot of groups are infiltrated. There will be infiltration in every group. Look, it's unimaginable to think that the powers that be would not infiltrate. Of course they'll infiltrate. They'll set up groups as well. Together is a set up thing. It's a completely controlled operation. And there's stupid people, in fact, very stupid people in the movement that are mixed up with them. They're just working for the other side. But anyway, we'll talk about them later. But okay. in the IMG, there was, there were 2 people following me. The documents are all redacted, of course. There's loads of things crossed out in them. But they had, I think legally, it was agreed they'd reveal their names as used in public. Interesting stuff.
So
the IMG, ex-IMG, me Tariq Ali, another one, for example, agreed to participate in this inquiry in order to find out what's going on. The SWP, though, have been ambiguous about it, because they said, oh, yes, we know there was lots of infiltration and we're embarrassed about it. Well, for not having it revealed now, one has to wonder, what is the SWP? Because they arrange all the route marches for the Palestine Solidarity, and the consequence of the most recent one was it was all a police trap. So, you know, there's a lot of very genuine people in the SWP, don't get me wrong. I mean, you know, really, really good people.
Yeah.
But, well, like the IMG was, you know, there will be infiltration, there will be control of all sorts. So, you know, anyone in a revolutionary group has to think carefully and observe.
Yeah.
Right, so where are we now? We've got to squatting, 1975. And after that, as I said, we all got rehoused. That G'd up the squatting movement in GLC properties, Greater London Council properties. And then that was 75. So 79, we carried on campaigning, just squat, 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 one eviction, two squats, all the time. And then the GLC agreed to give tenancies to all its 10,000 squatters.
Ah, okay.
And that's what happened.
Right.
And that, you think about it, was a consequence of what we did in Elgin Avenue, which depended on Terminus Road, Brighton, and if anybody's there who was at Terminus Road, Brighton, thank you. And that final weekend in Elgin Avenue when people stayed put.
Yeah.
So,
do you think
carry on.
Do you think there are victories? Do you think we can win victories, or do you think?
Well, those were victories we won.
Big picture.
The powers that be definitely thought it was a victory for us, and they
Okay.
were severely embarrassed. And what was his name? Richard Balfe, the GLC guy who gave in to us, he got criticised a lot, but, you know, he went on being successful. And he eventually joined the Tories, I think, because he was off about something. But anyway, that's just a detail of a political whatever. Sorry, what is your question now?
I was just asking about success in the big picture. So is there a way in which they allow us to have small victories, and then on the big scale?
Oh, yes, of course. Look, it's unimaginable to think that everything that happens, they will try and use it against us. And we have to think the same thing. Everything that happens, we should try and use it against them. Like one eviction, two squats. It's a good thing. What happened recently outside the BBC? I got evicted for carrying a bunch of tulips. Well, to the BBC, and we're told this is a serious disruption of life and community. Well, this is laughable. But and I'm not allowed to be outside the BBC.
Tell the story then a bit more, because give a bit more detailed context.
All right.
To the tulip story.
Palestine Solidarity March. SWP and PSC organised collaboration with the police for 3 weeks. Herds everybody into Whitehall, and then the police say you can't leave. Oh yeah, and then they say yes you can, and then let us into Trafalgar Square, and then they said if you stay here you're going to be arrested. So they arrested 77 people, or 75.
Yeah.
I then left. I didn't get arrested there. I thought, well, this is no good. I'll go to the BBC. So I went to the BBC as an individual with a bunch of flowers which had been left by the leaders of the Palestine Solidarity, etc. march in front of the police, because the police wouldn't let them march to the BBC, which is the original plan. And so I picked up this bunch of tulips and proceeded. And since my brother was part of that delegation, I thought, well, I'm the older brother, so I have to finish something the younger brother hasn't completed. So, that's the job of elder brothers, isn't it? So I went to the BBC with this bunch of flowers, got accosted by a policeman who said, you can't take that here. I said, why not? He said, oh, you're clearly part of that demonstration and you're not allowed to be here. So I folded up my banner, this one. Gaza is, can you see that on the banner?
Yeah, you'll see that.
That was the banner, great big thing, holding this. He said, you're clearly part of a demonstration. I said, well, I'm here as an individual because the Palestine March finished in Trafalgar Square. They didn't go anywhere.
Sure.
And the copper said, yeah, but that's still a protest. I said, okay, I'll fold this up. And I folded it up. I said, now, will you let me take these flowers to the, walk across there to give them to the BBC as a protest against children killed and because of the lies the BBC are saying. He said, no, this is serious disruption of life and community, contrary to Section 14 of the Public Order Act 1986. I said, really? And then he asked again, can I persuade you to go? I said, well, of course I'll go if you let me just deliver the flowers. And then he said, you're under arrest.
Oh.
Under Section 14. And he went on to his, they have a whole paragraph they got to repeat to you.
Yeah.
I said, that's very well repeated, officer. Thank you. And they took me away. They were very polite, They know it's complete nonsense. And I was released, that was 5:30 or so in the afternoon, and I was released at 9:30 in the morning.
Oh, okay.
After 4 everlasting breakfasts or whatever they're called.
What's I don't know that phrase.
Yeah. Well, I've been. This is my 19th arrest since the start of arrests in the COVID resistance campaign. Where are we now? We got to 1975. Then I went off doing more and more astrophysics. So I did MSc in astrophysics in Queen Mary, not till 82, 83. Sorry, 81, 82, I think it was, thinking about it. Anyway, so from that, you see, I then started doing, I'd always been interested in solar activity and the weather, because when I was a kid, I'd read, maybe solar activity, that's particle and magnetic things, sunspots and so on, does affect the weather. So I looked into this, and I was doing active research in it until about 1983, and kind of trying out different ideas. And I gave up. It was too difficult. I couldn't get it to work. Anyway, then the miners' strike came along, and I was still in the IMG at the time.
When you say you couldn't get it to work, is it were you trying to prove a link between sun activity and the weather?
Yes. Yeah. Yes. Actually, no. Was I still in the IMG? I'm trying to think. No, I joined the Labour Party in '83, didn't I? So, but I knew lots of people in the IMG and revolutionaries around. Okay. So I was trying to establish long-range weather forecasting using predictable aspects of the sun, because there are known cycles on the sun, you see. And anyway, I gave up. It was too difficult. And the miners' strike came along, and people said to me, oh, Piers, you were forecasting the weather, weren't you, long term? What's it going to be like? Is it going to be cold this winter? We want to know for the miners. I said, look, I don't know. They said, look, just do it. Just do it again. Go back and do it. I said, no. And then I said, okay, I'll give it a go. So I did give it a go. I went back to do research, did find some more things, and said, it's going to be a very cold winter, 84, 85. And the NUM firm said, Mr. you saying that? That's really good, really good. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Now, of course, they were betrayed, as we well know, in March 85, but, or was it 84? And whatever happened anyway. 84, it was 84, 85. It would be betrayed in March by a certain group, a certain pit in South Wales. That's my opinion. Anyway, right, so I went back to it, made the prediction that 84, 85 would be a very cold winter, and it was. So I was very pleased, the miners were pleased, and then I thought, well, okay, I'll carry on with this research. And then I got a job in South Bank University doing lecturing, where I met a few people, and eventually set up Weather Action Limited. Well, it was. We weren't called that then. We were. What were we called? Weather Plan Services Limited. Yes, I set it up with a guy who subsequently turned out to be a crook, Addy Ogan. But so we did set it up, and then we're doing well. We're making forecasts, selling forecasts, predicting tropical storm formation around the world to the day.
Right.
South China Sea, prediction, nothing happens on the day it does. You know, stuff like that, very impressive. And we floated on the stock exchange as Weather Action Holdings PLC. Is that visible?
Should be, yeah.
And I was then valued at £3 million. But I was told you can't have it, Mr. Corbyn, because if you do, the company collapses because you go away with the IP. Anyway, long story, but we were successful, did well, but the COVID nonsense came along, massive drop of business, and we'd already delisted by then anyway because we weren't making enough money for the guys on the stock exchange to be happy. But I would just say to that, about 2/3 of businesses that start on the stock exchange, the AIM, the small, for small businesses, fail. We didn't fail, actually. We did very well, and we were relaunched then as Weather Action Limited. But cutting a long story short, I'm still operating, but as a sole trader. With the I own the whole of the IP, which has subsequently developed fantastically since then.
Just say what IP is for people.
In intellectual property, i.e. how we do it. In this room, there's completely acres of folders of graphs, scatter plots of correlations, and different weather stations all over the world, all over the Northern Hemisphere, to be more precise.
Right.
Which making a forecast 5 years ago or 10 years ago even was tedious. Now it's much, much quicker because we've worked out all sorts of shortcuts, but they only came from very, very long, arduous work. And I had a number of really hard-working people with me, both Iranian, 2 of them Iranian anyway.
Okay.
Manucha Golapur and Bamzi Yazdi, that's another guy.
Well, it's easy for you to say.
Yes, anyway, if they're watching, they'll know.
When you first started your work with The Sun, not the newspaper, but when he was trying to, I presumably it wasn't controversial. You weren't battling against the whole climate agenda.
No, people were
so what
impressed I was having a go.
Yeah, and supportive, presumably.
Yes, supportive, but I remember some really one of these moments that sticks in your mind forever. I was at a meeting of I've been elected an FRAS, Fellow of the Royal Astronomical Society, and I was speaking to the head of it, just having a chat, and he says, "Oh, Piers, he does long-range forecasting," you know, and people were really impressed because they were successful. Anyway, just in another room, and I'd just been in there was a showing of some research results about the ice cores in the Antarctic, and they were just measuring CO2 and temperature using isotopes, and there was a correlation, but it was the wrong way round, namely that there were changes in temperature before changes in carbon dioxide levels.
Sure.
And this goes back over 20,000 years. So obviously CO2 is not driving anything. CO2 is driven. Anyway, I was talking to him, and this guy comes out of the meeting. I already knew what had happened in the meeting, but he was talking to me about forecasting, right? And so he says to him, "Oh, what's happened?" He said, "Yes, there is correlation, but it's the wrong way round." And all of them went silent. Yeah. Now, it didn't really strike me as so what then, but you know, they were already onto a game.
Okay.
They were already onto making this CO2 story a big thing. I mean, these guys got loads of money for all this research, you know.
Yeah.
And then me talking about the sun driving it, well, maybe that's a problem. And of course it is a problem.
Sure.
So the BBC don't, I mean, I've got that poster there on the front page of The Guardian, 1996, of our long-range weather forecasting.
Okay. Is that you, is it?
Yes, but The Guardian wouldn't put me, they don't even entertain one word from me in The Guardian now.
No.
But, you know, I'm the same, they've changed.
Yeah.
So the climate story is completely negated. Their story, I mean, is completely negated by solar activity, and we can prove it. And they can prove nothing. They've got no evidence for their claims whatsoever. Nothing. But so it goes on. So, you know, brainwashing and lies have to continue.
So, I mean, for those listening, the whole climate agenda, pushing the CO2 narrative, as is presumably you would agree that is being done for an agenda. It's being used to promote,
and it's very
control.
Deep. It's unimaginably deep. For example, when we right when we started doing public forecasting, before being on the stock exchange even, we got approached by General Accident. They flew from Scotland. Mr. Corbyn, we want your forecasts. Okay. And they want to know, insurance companies, what's going to happen in the summer, winter, there'll be floods, whatever. They're going to want to know what they're going to pay out.
Yeah.
So they could adjust their premiums, right? Risks. They were very supportive guys, you know, very good. And you know, then we said, look, we could do some research for longer range than we were doing. And, you know, he took me into his office in the centre. What's his name? Can't remember his name. He said, Piers, what can we do for you? And they wrote me a cheque for £180,000.
Okay.
And I showed this around South Bank Uni. People said, what the f***, Piers, what's this? Anyway, we got this money, we did research, we made forecasts over 2 years ahead. They were independently verified as being accurate. Wonderful.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, in the time we were doing all this research and making the forecasts, the insurance companies had merged. And the agreement was they were funding this research and they'd get the forecasts at a reduced rate compared with the public, which could obviously get these extra long-range forecasts. So I phoned them up, and they were now all called Norwich Union, which was the smallest, but they'd all merged into one anyway. Norwich Union were heading it. And I phoned them up and said, oh, the forecasts are ready. Do you want us to send them? Obviously, they'll have to pay something, but not as much as anyone else. He said, no, we don't need them. I said, what? He said, yes, we don't need them. I said, what do you mean you don't need them? You just paid 180 grand between you to have them all.
Yeah.
And you've got them at reduced rate. He said, no, Mr. Corbyn, no, we don't need them anymore. I said, why not? He said, well, we just don't need them. And he couldn't get any sense out of it. It makes no sense because insurance companies need forecasts, right?
Yeah, sure.
Anyway, then I said to him, it's all on the phone. I was on the Alton estate on the balcony at this moment in time. I remember it so vividly, looking around at this beautiful sky and these mothers and children rushing off to school and stuff like that. I said, tell me, am I on the wrong bus or something? He said, yes, I think that's something like that, yes. I said, what do you mean? He said, oh, well, I can't say more. No, I can't say more. Now, the wrong bus. What it meant was they didn't want to entertain anything from us because they had been shown a way to make money out of the climate con.
Yeah.
And already we'd had this stuff in a meeting where one of the guys originally from General Accident, who said, look, Piers' forecasts are very good, but let's be clear, CO2 does have a big impact, which of course is nonsense, but he was putting that forward as a belief, you see.
Yeah.
Anyway, now it became a necessity. And I was trying to work out, well, okay, what's in this for them? Why don't they want the forecasts? Even just to have them, you know, because it's small beer for them, you know, it's just... And anyway, they can change the risk and make more money. That's obvious. Change the premiums, you see. So I thought about it, and they had spent about £6 million on a flood model for England, or maybe for Britain actually, to show where it's likely to flood. So then they have this flood map of flood risk and chat about climate change. So what they wanted to do was to scare people into buying their flood forecasts. And I think they thought that if the public knew they were getting forecasts from me, they'd be very annoyed if our forecast said no floods.
Yeah.
Because they'd be raking in the money on the back of lies. I think, obviously, I don't know this. This is conjecture. They're not going to tell me.
Yeah, sure.
But that's what happened. But just to be clear, you know what I mean? Things will happen in business which are unexpected. And guys in the city are always ahead of you. I mean, they were great guys. They raised £1 million for us. We developed. But in the end, they always had a game, which was they did a reverse takeover, it was called, and we backed out and became, reset a company up as internetaction.com instead of weatheractionholdings.com. And you know, they knew what they were doing. They treated us fairly. No, they were very fair, and we did okay out of it. But just to be sure, people at a high level in business, all these big corporations like the insurance companies, they'll have a game plan which is not going to be known to you unless you're very much inside.
Yeah.
So there we are, and we've had this difficulty now at selling forecasts because we're, you know, regarded as a bit nuts and so forth, or off the scale. However, farmers buy the forecasts, they don't care. A number of farmers buy our forecasts because of what we say about climate con, because they can see it's a con. And they do want the forecasts as well.
Yeah.
And energy traders buy them because, well, for example, if they want to know the date of the thaw in Norway in the spring, because as soon as the reservoirs melt, then electricity becomes cheaper, very much cheaper, because of the hydroelectricity works.
Okay.
So the price of energy in Europe goes right down.
Right.
So energy traders gamble on this stuff and use our forecasts. They really only need one forecast actually for that to make their money or not. Anyway,
well,
anyone out there who's watching, we still are selling forecasts and we want to sell more.
Yeah.
I'm behind in their production because of doing campaigning, but they're still there and still accurate. And that recent milder time, which just happened before the 18th, we predicted that to the day from, that was only about, 10 weeks ahead, but most of these things are like, you know, could be a year ahead.
Defiance Records, bringing you the best music from the movement. Ramise's Never Give Up and Mad Mix's You're So Right, available now as a double A side on Defiance. And Raw Milk Conspiracy bringing purpose back to music with their latest single, This Is England 2024, and their brilliant debut, Misinformation Hall. Plus, now is a fantastic Ballad of a Toolmaker song from Trevor John. All available from Defiance Records, the Freedom label.
He did what he was told to do back then, and that's how he got the number 10.
Are we heading into an ice age, in your opinion?
There will be an ice age, yeah. There's a mini ice age coming, yes. It's getting colder towards 2030, 2035. Will be significantly colder as a mini ice age due to changing solar activity, or more precisely, solar lunar, as we call it, activity, i.e. the modulation by the moon's orbit of particle magnetic connections between the sun and the earth. And there are various predictions of this, and it shows it will be generally very cold then.
For how long, in your opinion?
About 5 years. And then it will, in all probability, get a bit milder again.
Yeah.
But are we heading after that into an ice age? Yes, because all these interglacial periods, that is between ice ages, are about 10,000 years, and we've had 10,000 years of this one.
Mm-hmm.
The reason for this is, let's understand, the natural state of climate for the last million years is ice age, with intermittent
warm periods.
Intermittent warmer periods called interglacials. We are in an interglacial now.
Right.
And all of this is solar magnetically controlled. It's to do with the tilt of the Earth, 23 degrees or less or more, and the direction of the pole, where the pole is pointing to, because that rotates with a period of 19,000 years. And the tilt of the Earth oscillates with a period of 43,000 years. So when they're coincident in a certain way, it gets warmer. Otherwise, it's cold and we get ice age.
Yeah.
So England will be covered with ice. Last time it was down as far as the M4. But the far south coast was ice-free, interestingly. We've got to, long-range forecasting and all that stuff. Yes, I was lecturing for quite a time at the same time, and then stopped lecturing and just did this full time.
Where were you lecturing?
South Bank University nearby. We had our office there originally, and then we moved to here when we downsized. But we do need more income. I mean, frankly, I spend too much time on campaigning, but you see, this has to be done. And of course, they are completely linked, you see, because we're outside the box anyway, scientifically. I think it's worth talking a bit about scientists and ones I know. You see, they basically worry about where the, how's the mortgage going to be paid.
Where the funding's going
So they'll shut up.
Yeah, tell us a little bit then how peer review process, how corrupt that is.
Peer review process. Well, I would say it is essentially corrupt, yes. I mean, John Beckman and I, he's from Queen Mary College, we did write some little thing about a new idea we had on some particles. And we got a very rude reply, which just, no, this is blah, blah, blah. Well, you know what I mean? They didn't explain why. And I think it was clearly treading on someone else's toes, and they just didn't like it. I mean, that's an example.
Yeah.
Otherwise, a more significant political thing is when the fakery of the climate con was being revealed at the University of East Anglia, or in the University of East Anglia. Let's just get out one of these graphs. Here we are. We could do a little exposition about the nature of all this climate stuff in due course, if you want.
Is this the hockey curve?
Yes,
the hockey stick.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, remember that there are people, and I'm one of them, but remember that there'll be people watching who might appreciate a little bit of context, because
absolutely.
they're not as
very important.
au fait with the...
Very important. So there were these documents leaked about hiding the decline, and they were emails where they said a number of things.
Hiding the decline?
Hiding the decline.
What does that mean?
This was hiding the decline in temperatures after the medieval warm period. Now, I don't know if you can see this graph, but we can look at it later. So that is the medieval warm period, and the temperature goes down markedly after that.
Okay.
Now, for them...
That's a problem, isn't it?
A big problem, because CO2 was going up under their data, and temperature was going down, and this was 700 years ago, so they're really embarrassed. So they have these emails saying, oh, we found out how to hide the decline. Namely, they were going to switch data sets from one to another. And
so if you're being cynical, you would say they're trying to fudge the...
It was fraud.
The data.
It was absolute fraud. And so, we heard about this, and we rummaged through also these emails, and it said, we're going to make absolutely sure that Piers Corbyn and his likes never get anything published in any respectable peer review magazine.
You got a mention by name, did you, in the emails?
Yeah.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Me and the guys from America, which Richard Linden, for example. I'm not sure he was mentioned or not, actually, but I was mentioned because I'm in England and they're in England.
Yeah.
Richard Linden's another climate skeptic over there, which we'll talk about in due course. So that's what was going on. They were committing fraud, producing this hockey stick, as it's called, which is not a true representation.
Okay, so before we continue with that.
But I want to say, on this, there was a guy there, Hubert Lamb, a brilliant meteorologist. These records are second to none. The Lamb charts describing English weather on a daily basis for centuries, you know. He was a big wheel in there. And before he died, he wrote to me and he said, Piers, I am really upset how we've been taken over by these CO2 people.
Yeah.
And his work on solar activity, some of which inspired me. It didn't have the answers, but it had, something pointing that way. He was taken over. And it's an utter disgrace. And they just lie and lie and lie. They don't have evidence. We got the graph here, which shows that the CO2 levels rise after temperature rises and fall after temperature falls, or so forth. So the data shows that CO2 is driven, not a driver.
So the question I was going to ask a second ago is, let's assume that you're right, and it seems to be.
Before you say that, no, just
go on.
They also adjust data. They adjust data in the past. They admit they adjust data. They say it's been corrected or something. It's nonsense.
Yeah.
They make, and there's a graph there showing it, they make it colder in the past and warmer in the present. So they change the data in the past. Now, I was with Judy in...
Yeah,
probably in here or in the Technopark, one or the other. And we just got this new data set from the University of East Anglia. They issue these things. And she was looking at it on the screen. She said, it's changed. I said, what do you mean it's changed? She said, yeah, in the past, last year it's changed. The year before's changed. I said, what are you talking about? It's changed. How can it change? It's changed. They've sent changed data. And they admitted it. They have numbers of data sets produced every year. All of them fiddled to make it colder in the past and warmer in the future, or warmer now.
And what's the excuse they give for that?
Oh,
there is some...
we got a better data set, we got a better station, we've performed some corrections, we overcorrected or undercorrected for urban heating, or just whatever.
Yeah.
Things they can choose, right?
Yeah.
But we know it's lies because when you look at things like things they can't lie about, how many days in America was it 100 degrees F or over? Where those are all recorded because the newspapers go berserk. So you can count them. The 1930s, there were loads more than now. So, it was hotter in America then than now. Okay. But right now we know Trump's inauguration was a very cold day. And it hadn't been as cold since, I don't know, a long time ago anyway. Just as a one-off.
Yeah.
It's only a one-off. Yeah. But look, there's fraud and fraud there, and nothing else.
Okay, so
these people won't debate with us. We go to meetings and they don't want to hear.
So who's controlling them then? Because if they were objective scientists, they wouldn't be doing that. So
no,
where's that coming from?
Well, it's the funding. Imperial gets loads of funding from Bill Gates.
Okay,
they all get funding.
That's pretty straightforward.
There's all going to be projects. Okay. The Together operation is right in the middle of a labyrinth of all sorts of funding things, which includes what I just said. Well, anyway, later for that. So back to the science.
Okay. Put together on hold.
Why do scientists do these things? Well, to feed the family, I would say.
Yeah.
Some of them refuse, of course. And then you get leaks, like happened in the University of East Anglia. So there will be leaks. They won't be able to hold this line. No, they won't be able to, because there will be revelations, because most people who were scientists became scientists because they wanted to find something out.
Yeah, yeah.
And when they know they're wrong, they can soldier on in different ways.
Sure.
But I don't accept that they should lie. I mean, in Imperial Theoretical Physics place, I know people there, and they know their models of particles are way wrong. But they press on. They're not trying to fiddle anything. That's the important thing I want to say. They recognise they're wrong. And I say, well, look, this don't work, guys. And they say, well, Piers, yes, it doesn't work now, but we think we're on the right track. We've at least got somewhere. No, that's fair enough.
Mm-hmm.
But the guys in University of East Anglia, they know they're wrong, so they fiddle the data. I mean, that is completely unacceptable. And I want people to understand it's entirely different as well. I'll tell you an interesting story about the level that which this gets to. This was 2004, and I was invited to the Global Oil Summit in Houston, Texas, to give an exposition of long-range forecasting, solar weather effects, and so forth.
Yeah.
And when I got there, I thought, this isn't very big. And then I realised, my God, there were CEOs of top companies, oil companies. Mm-hmm. The American Army was there. And a guy called Andrei Ilyanov, who was Putin's chief scientific advisor.
Yeah.
So they're all sitting there, and I give this talk, and he says, Mr. Corbyn, will you come and give us a talk in Moscow? I said, sure, yeah. Russian Academy of Sciences. So I do later on that year, right? So, successful talk. Oh, people always say, what are you doing talking at oil companies or something? Well, look, if people ask us about forecasts, whatever the companies, we will go there. I mean, obviously there may be issues about what the companies do, but they weren't involved there. We weren't giving forecasts to, Bill Gates, for example.
Yeah.
Anyway, it was a good meeting, actually, that Global Oil Summit. Very, people really wanted to know what was going on. So I get invited to Moscow, Russian Academy of Sciences, me and 4 others from around the world, including Richard Lindzen, very famous meteorologist from the US of A. And we arrive, and then Andriana says, because I didn't quite know what was going on, why we were there. We just said, well, we'll now discuss man-made climate change, and should Putin sign the Kyoto Protocol? No. Or was it the Paris Accord? No, it's Kyoto, I think, then. It doesn't matter, anyway, one or the other. And that was going to be discussed at the Russian Academy of Sciences. And then he said to us, we've invited the Met Office, and we've told them you're here. And they've said they're not going to come. And they're at the airport. And then he said, but I know they will. And sure enough, they did.
Okay.
Now, they had been invited to convince the Russian Academy of Sciences that Putin should sign the Kyoto Protocol. Okay. So they came, a very funny meeting. And, I'm standing in front of some of them and says, it'd be nice if this graph, in fact, I got one of these graphs. And you see there's the yellow, which is carbon dioxide, the red, which is geomagnetic activity, and the blue, which is smoothed out temperature. So you're going to film this separately, I suppose.
Yeah.
But the geomagnetic activity and the temperature move together. Mm-hmm. And the carbon dioxide level just does its own thing. The top part of the graph, the temperature, is probably fraud because they were changing all the stuff later. But generally speaking, up to there, they do follow. So I held this up and I said, wouldn't it be nice if one of these was CO2 and one of them was temperature, and he was completely silent because he knows they're wrong. Anyway, that meeting, really interesting people. I remember in the break, there were 5 of us. Each of us were approached by 2 from the other side. And they said, Piers, you shouldn't be with these people. You're above them. And they were trying to recruit each of us into their camp.
Okay.
Right? Now, nobody went into their camp, but, they've got money behind them. So, I don't know what I would have been offered, but all sorts of things would have come, I dare say. Anyway, and I said to this guy, I said, look, your theory of, there's a name for it, about, it's like photon conservation of radiation up to the sky is untrue. In other words, it's the belt theory of CO2 up there keeps it warmer. I said, look, it's untrue, and at the different levels of the atmosphere, it doesn't work. He said, oh yes, Piers. He agreed it was untrue, and then he said, but that's what we teach in schools.
Okay.
I said, yes, but this is the Russian Academy of Sciences, and he didn't like that. And he went off, and I talked to somebody else. But complete farce. For them, it was a complete farce.
Yeah.
Anyway, the Russian Academy of Sciences discussed, agreed that man-made climate change was at least suspect, and Putin should not sign the Kyoto Protocol. Okay, and that was absolutely clear. And they had a press conference about it, and the Met Office had a press conference and was duly upset and so forth. I thought, well, that's good, isn't it? Anyway, I come back to England, and about, I think that was July, September or so, I'm watching television, and there is Putin signing the Kyoto Protocol on television. So I phoned up the Russian friend, who was a great guy, and said, look, what's going on? We agreed. Every one of us agreed. I agreed. You agreed. The Russian Academy of Sciences agreed. Why is he doing this? And he said to me, Beslan, Beslan, Beslan. I said, what are you talking about? He said, Beslan. I can't talk. He said, I've got to go. And he went.
Okay.
What is Beslan?
Well, that's what I was going to ask.
Right. Well, Beslan is the name of that school where there was a pitched battle with the Russian security forces and Chechen rebels.
Oh, yeah.
And some people were killed, as far as I remember. I don't know if any children were killed, but it was all a big thing, So I said, well, what has that got to do with signing the Kyoto Protocol? That was his answer. Anyway, about a month after that, the Russians were in Chechnya, killing, and killing. And the West said nothing. Nothing. They respected Russia's backyard. Okay. Well, I suspect the price was Putin signing the Kyoto Protocol.
Oh, okay. Right.
Now, the Russians haven't followed the Kyoto Protocol much, but, it gave the West the right to say it's now world law because they had to have an extra big nation to sign it, and the Russians were refusing. So they were hanging out for a price, obviously. Putin said, well, we're gonna take back Chechnya, and you've got to support us, or at least do nothing. I think that's what. Look, no one's going to tell me what really happened, but that's
makes sense.
My assessment of it. Because anything the Russians do now, the West go berserk. You know what I mean? They fire a shot anywhere.
Yeah,
they'll be, but then not for Chechnya. I know. Yeah. No, there's pros and cons of Chechen rebels. I'm not going to argue about that, but I'm just saying what I saw happen.
Sure.
Just so people understand the climate thing, because climate story, the story of man-made climate change, is the backdrop to everything they do. It's the ideological justification for carbon footprinting, digital ID. If we got rid of all these green legislation things, we'd immediately have safe farming, and that's been used as an excuse to close farming and a massive land grab. It would immediately bring us cheap electricity, because whatever they say, wind farms are very expensive and inefficient, and as are solar farms, which are covering over land anyway. we would end all the ULEZ highway robbery. It would end carbon footprinting, which will be used for controlling you. So we'll have your carbon footprint, whack it on an AI machine. The AI machine will know that you've exceeded your limit, and then your cash card won't work. And so on and so on. You had no need for smart meters. So it's important to understand when you're in an argument with these people to point out how it's false. Now, the biggest thing is to tell them carbon dioxide levels are driven by temperature, not the other way around. There's 20,000 years of data that show that, and that data is accepted by all sides. Right? Now, that should shut them up, but it won't, because they're religious. They're religious. So I just want to show you a little bit more, and I think cleverly these things might be in the right order. Well, that's what I'm hoping anyway. So first thing, this is a very famous graph accepted by all sides, and at the time, of course, it was some time ago, so they didn't mind. It's a graph of isotopic measurements of carbon-14 and oxygen-18. Now, don't worry about the technicalities, but the carbon-14 is a measure of activity from the sun. So the more, well, it's ultraviolet. Anyway, it doesn't matter. More solar activity or less solar, it doesn't matter. It measures solar activity, this one, the white one, that one there, and the temperature is measured by this one. And this goes back to, it's the last age before present. Let's have a look at this. So this must be, anyway, it's many tens of thousands of years, it doesn't really matter. The point is, they move together. The solar activity smoothed out and the temperatures smoothed out move together. So that is scientific fact, observed fact. CO2 is driven, it has nothing to do with it. The solar activity drives temperature. Then we have that graph that I showed you before of CO2 levels follow temperature. That's the green one follows the red one. And that is 20,000 years of data, again from ice cores. I think the Vostok ice core in Antarctica. The third thing to know is they committed fraud about the past. And that is shown on the so-called hockey stick and the usurping of the good name of Hubert Lamb, who was an incredible meteorologist. Now, how is it that carbon dioxide levels follow temperature? Well, the answer is the sea, and we have pictures here. The sea, when it is warmer, will emit carbon dioxide because the amount of CO2 in the sea can only be there if it's colder. If it's colder, there's more there. Warm up a bottle of pop, CO2 comes off. It's the same principle. So when there's a warm sea, it emits CO2. So you've got your medieval warm period, warm, ice melting, lots of stuff going on. At the same time then, of course, Greenland melts, or bits of it. And then that very cold water at the edge of Greenland, freezing of course, will absorb the high CO2 air. And that then gets subducted, carried undersea, cold water, around the world, and it comes out about 700 or 800 years later. So, and that's what this graph shows. You see these meandering lines, some of them come out in the Indian Ocean, some in the Pacific Ocean. So what we're seeing now, the extra CO2, is due to an after effect of the medieval warm period. And bear in mind, the sea holds 50 times more CO2 in it than the air. So it doesn't take much for the sea to change what's happening in the air. And these people who talk about acidification of the ocean are talking complete lies. Because even if all the CO2 in the air went into the ocean, it would only be 1/50th of it. It wouldn't make a scrap of difference. And it doesn't happen that way. They're talking about minute changes anyway. It's complete madness and lies. Any one of us could be a police agent. I mean, as I said, when I was in the IMG, I didn't think these guys were police agents. All the rest are Tory light and you're different. And, you know, that was the patter to keep, and that's what won in the thing, but the leadership. But then later on, of course, he got squeezed, tricked, misled. But I'll tell you something very interesting about South Africa.
If you'd like to buy signed prints of any of the paintings from the series, you can go to jakefern.com or go to jakefern.co.uk to see my personal work. You can message me about the possibility of commissioning a portrait for yourself or a loved one. We also have Righteous Brothers work available in unlimited and limited edition prints. Perfect for anyone who wants the world to know what they think about what's going on. If you'd like to support 1,000 Words on Patreon, please go to the link in the description. You get access to exclusive behind-the-scenes interviews and merchandise, as well as advanced news on up-and-coming episodes and events.